8 months, every Tuesday, he came through my door with words. His name was Cale Holt, cattle operations 6 miles north of Millhaven, Montana. He came in at 9:30 each week, which meant he had left his ranch before sunrise. He set his hat on the counter. He pushed his message across to me. He waited while I sent it. And when the reply came through from Ohio, I wrote it out in my clearest hand and slid it back across the counter and watched him read it. For 8 months, I did this without saying anything that was not operational. The Tuesday I remember is the one when he came through my door with none. My name is Ada Crest. I have been the telegraph operator in Millhaven since the spring of 1880, when my father brought me west on the Northern Pacific Line and then died of a heart failure in June and left me with his equipment, his keys, and the job he had been hired to do. The Millhaven station had no particular interest in hiring a woman, but they had even less interest in training a replacement mid-season. And I already knew Morse code faster than anyone they were likely to find. And so they kept me on provisional terms that had extended into 3 years without anyone formally resolving them. Was the first woman to operate a telegraph station in this part of Montana Territory. This was not remarked upon by anyone in Millhaven who was not either very impressed or very uncomfortable, and both groups left me alone in the way that people leave alone things they have not decided how to categorize. I found this arrangement acceptable. My father had taught me the key when I was 11 years old in a telegraph office in Akron, Ohio, sitting on an upturned crate because the stool was too high. He said, "Words need to travel faster than people can carry them. This is how you send a word at the speed of light." He showed me the key and the rhythm and the code. I learned it in a week. I have been sending other people's words at the speed of light ever since. For 3 years in Millhaven, I had handled other people's most important communications. Their business, their grief, their emergencies, their love. I received. I transmitted. I recorded. I was the wire. What the words meant was not supposed to be my concern. I was human, which meant it was. Cale Holt's first message, in February of 1882, was 12 words. Arrived Millhaven safely. Riding properly tomorrow. Tell your mother I remember her birthday. The recipient was a Miss Louisa Fenwick of Columbus, Ohio. I sent it and noted the recipient and recorded it in the log and thought nothing of it. His second message was 17 words. His third was 22. By April, he had stopped concerning himself with the cost per word, which in 1882 was 25 cents for the first 10 words and 3 cents per word beyond that, and which told me either that his cattle operation was doing well or that the recipient had become worth the expense. By May, his messages had the quality I recognized from 3 years of handling correspondence. The careful expansiveness of a man who is choosing his words not to fit a budget but to fit a feeling he is trying to describe precisely enough to cross 1,000 miles of wire without losing its shape. I was strict with myself about not thinking about those messages. I thought about them. The work of a telegraph operator is the work of a particular kind of invisibility. You are present for the most important moments of people's lives, the birth telegrams, the death telegrams, the come home telegrams, the don't come home telegrams, and you transmit them faithfully and you become. In the act of transmitting, a piece of infrastructure. Infrastructure does not have opinions. Infrastructure does not feel things about the current it carries. I had been infrastructure for 3 years, and I had gotten very good at it. And the getting good at it had cost something I had not fully priced until Cale Holt started coming through my door every Tuesday at 9:30 with words for someone in Ohio. The cost was this. I had become fluent in other people's hearts and illiterate in my own. 3 years of receiving the most important things people needed to say, and I had stopped having any particular practice at saying important things myself. I sent my father's last message from Akron to a cousin in Pittsburgh. I received the reply, 2 words, arriving safe, and I folded it and put it in my coat pocket and walked back to the office and opened the log and made the entry and went to work. That was 3 years ago. I had not sent a personal message since. The replies from Ohio came through on Thursdays generally. Miss Louisa Fenwick wrote in complete sentences, with good grammar and a warmth that was genuine in the early months, the warmth of a woman who is receiving something she has been hoping for and is allowing herself to be pleased. I transcribed her words onto paper and set them aside for Cale to collect, and I did not add to them, and I did not subtract from them, and I went home on Thursday evenings and sat at my kitchen table and was very professional about the whole thing. Mostly. Millhaven was a small town in the way that small towns in Montana Territory in 1882 were small, not charming small. Just genuinely few people, genuinely limited options, genuinely reliant on each person doing their specific work without a great deal of redundancy. The telegraph office was one room beside the depot, 8 feet by 12, with my desk and my key in my log and 2 chairs for waiting customers. I knew everyone who came through that door by their walk before they reached the counter. I knew their handwriting before they handed me the slip. I knew which of them could afford to be brief and which of them were brief because they found words difficult, and which of them were brief because they had learned that the important things don't take many. Cale Holt had started brief and grown. That was its own kind of information. Milhaven knew Cale Holt the way small towns know their reliable men. He paid his bills at the feed store on the 1st of the month. He did not drink more than was reasonable. He had been in Montana 6 years and had built his operation from a leased plot to owned land with no dramatic stories attached, which in Montana in 1882 was itself a kind of story. He had come from Wyoming originally, and before that from Iowa, and before that from somewhere he did not discuss, which people in Millhaven respected because most of them had a before that they did not discuss either. He was not the kind of man who came to the telegraph office often. Before February he had been in twice in the 3 years I had been operating, once for a business inquiry about cattle prices in Chicago, once for something I had not read and which was not my business. He was not a man who reached for words naturally. The careful, unpracticed handwriting on his message slip said as much. He had found words for Louisa Fenwick in Ohio and had practiced them into something that got better over 8 months, and then had stopped when the direction they were going proved wrong. I had watched this happen and said nothing because I was the wire. In June, the replies from Ohio began to take longer. 4 days became 9, 9 became 12, 12 became 17. I noted this the way I noted everything in the log, precisely, without commentary. When Cale came in on Tuesdays, I handed him what had come through, and I said nothing about the timing. The timing was none of my business. The messages were none of my business. I was the wire. He did not say anything about the timing either. He read the replies at the counter, standing, with the particular stillness of a man reading something he is working to keep his face neutral about. And then he folded the paper into thirds and put it in his coat pocket and nodded at me and left. The hat went back on at the door, an automatic gesture, the body's courtesy when the mind was occupied elsewhere. I noticed that gesture the first week and kept noticing it for 8 months. A man who takes his hat off when he comes to a desk and puts it back on when he goes out has a courtesy that lives in the muscle rather than in the deliberate mind. My father had had it. Very few men in Millhaven did. I put this observation in the same drawer where I put the messages and the timing of the replies, and I did not examine the drawer. In July, the replies from Ohio stopped being warm. They remained civil. Miss Louisa Fenwick had good manners and a decent character, which I could tell from 3 years of reading people's words. But there is a quality to a letter that has obligation in it rather than feeling. And by August, the obligation was the primary note. I wrote her words out in my clearest hand and set them in the collection box for Tuesday and went home. I did not sleep particularly well that August. In September, the last reply from Ohio came through. It was 11 words, which was much shorter than her usual length. And it was kind in the way that endings are kind when the person writing them has decided to be direct about it. I wrote it out. I folded it. I set it in the box. On Tuesday, Cale came in at 9:30. He set his hat on the counter. I handed him the slip. He read it standing at the counter, and I returned to my work and did not look up, which was the only courtesy I had available to give him. He stood at the counter for a long time. Then he folded the slip into thirds, put it in his pocket, picked up his hat, and went out the door without the usual nod. He did not come back the following Tuesday, or the one after, or the one after that. 3 empty Tuesdays. I noted the absence in the log with the same precision I gave everything, which was to say I noted that no messages were sent or received for Cale Holt on those dates, and I set this information in the log where information goes, and I told myself this was not something I was thinking about. I have been handling other people's words for 3 years. I have become, in that time, extremely precise about what I transmit and extremely private about what I receive. My father used to say, "The wire does not keep what it carries." I had built my whole professional practice on this principle. I had been the wire for 3 years. The problem with being the wire for 3 years is that eventually you become very good at knowing when a key gun current has stopped and very bad at pretending you do not notice the silence. I had noticed Cale Holt's messages the way I noticed things I was not supposed to be noticing, which was to say precisely quietly, with the specific attention of someone who understands that acknowledgement and action are different things and has learned to stop at the first. I had noticed the 12 words in February and the 52 words in April, and the contraction back to 30 in June, and the 11-word ending in September. I had noticed the hat and the fold into thirds and the 9:30, and the particular quality of stillness. he brought to reading a reply that required a neutral face. I had noticed all of these things and had filed them under operational observation and had not looked in that drawer. The 3 empty Tuesdays opened the drawer. The words that come through me on behalf of other people, their grief, their urgencies, their love, I have learned to hold as a wire holds a current, faithfully, without keeping any of it. You do not accumulate what passes through you. That is the discipline. The discipline was not working well in October. By the 3rd empty Tuesday, I had admitted to myself, in the specific and reluctant way of a person who is very good at not admitting things, that I had been noting the hour at 9:30 every Tuesday for 8 months, and that the noting had become a habit, and that a habit that age is not simply the registration of information. It is something else. I sat with this admission for a week and then put it in the drawer with the other things I was not examining and went back to work. He came back on a Tuesday in November. 9:30 exactly. He came through the door and his hat came off. The automatic gesture, the same as always, and he set it on the counter. He had nothing in his other hand. No message slip. No words written out on paper. He stood at the counter. I looked up from my log. I said, "No message today." He was quiet for a moment. He looked at the counter between us and then at me. His brown eyes had the quality his stillness always had, a man taking something in and deciding what to do with it. He said, "I've been coming here every Tuesday for 8 months," I said. "I know," he said. "I think it was the right direction. Just the wrong address." I looked at him across the counter. I looked at him across the counter. I knew things about this man that he did not know I knew. I knew his handwriting and how it had changed over 8 months, the loosening of it as the messages got longer, the careful return to formality in September as the replies cooled. I knew the cost of every word he had sent and the exact timing of every reply he had received. I knew the particular stillness he brought to reading words that required a neutral face, and I knew the hat gesture and the nod. And I knew that for 8 months he had come through this door at 9:30 and sent his life in a direction that had turned out not to be receiving it. I also knew, and this I had put in the drawer and not examined, that for 8 months I had been the person those words passed through on their way to Ohio, and that something of them had stayed with me, the way things stay with a wire that has carried enough current. I reached for a telegraph slip. I picked up my pen. I wrote on it and slid it across the counter. My name. Just Ada, 1 word. Because a telegraph operator understands that sometimes the whole message fits in a single word, and anything beyond that is not precision but noise. He looked at the slip. He looked at me. He picked it up and folded it the way he folded everything, into thirds, carefully, and put it in his coat pocket. He picked up his hat. He held it in his hands for a moment, and then he said, "Same time next week." I said, "I'll be here." He put his hat on. He went out the door. He came back the following Tuesday. He had no message. He sat in the chair across from my desk, the one reserved for people waiting on replies, and he stayed for 40 minutes. And we talked about things that had nothing to do with Ohio or Columbus or Miss Louisa Fenwick. He asked about the office, about the work, about what it was like to be the person a town's most important news passed through. I told him some of it. He listened with the full attention he gave things, which was the same quality he brought to reading replies at the counter. Nothing held back. Nothing performed. He asked about my father. I told him about Akron, about the upturned crate, about learning the key at 11 years old, about the specific sound Morse code makes when you first learn it, chaotic, meaningless, and the specific moment it stops being noise and becomes language, which happens differently for everyone, and which my father said was the moment a person decided to listen rather than just hear. Cale listened to this with the full attention he gave things, his hat on his knee. And when I finished, he said, "I think that happens with cattle, too. The land, you stop just looking and you start seeing." I said, I thought that was probably how most things worth knowing got transmitted. He said he thought so too. I also told him about the provisional terms that had extended 3 years without resolution, which made him smile in a way I had not seen before, not the managed expression he wore at the counter reading Ohio replies, but the actual thing, arriving without editorial control. He said, "I think Millhaven knows better than to resolve a working arrangement." I said, "That has been my understanding as well." When he left, he said it the way people say it when they mean to be back. He said his father had taught him cattle the same way, by sitting him beside him and not explaining, but just doing, so that eventually the doing became the only language available. I said, I thought that was probably how most things worth knowing got transmitted. He said he thought so too. When he left, he said, "It the way people say it when they mean to be back. He has been back every Tuesday since. I no longer pretend I don't notice the hour. There is a thing I want to say about what it is to work with words the way I have worked with them, and about what it costs and what it gives back. Millhaven's telegraph line connects east to Billings and west toward the mountains, and eventually, on a clear night with good wire, to somewhere that feels like the whole country. Every message I send goes out on that wire and arrives somewhere I have never been, in the hands of someone I have never met, carrying the exact words that were given to me. I add nothing. I subtract nothing. I am faithful to the text. My father said, "The wire does not editorialize. The wire carries what it is given." What he did not say, what I have learned in 3 years of being the wire, is that the wire still knows what it has carried. The current passes through and is gone, and the wire remains. And the wire has been changed by everything that has gone through it, in ways that do not show from the outside and do not require acknowledgement, but are real nonetheless. I have been changed by 3 years of other people's most important words. I could not have told you how until a Tuesday in November, when a man came through my door with nothing in his hands and said the most precise thing I had received across all that time. To spend your days receiving what other people most need to say and transcribing it faithfully and sending it along, never adding and never subtracting, just being the wire the current travels through. You learn things in that work about how people actually communicate, which is not the same as what they actually say. Cale Holt's messages to Ohio had started at 12 words and grown to 52 by April, and then contracted again in June as the replies cooled, as if he could feel the distance increasing and was adjusting his investment accordingly. That contraction was the thing I had noted without looking at directly. A man who had been generous with his words and was becoming careful with them, again was a man who understood something was changing and had not yet decided what to do about it. What he had done in November was come through my door with nothing in his hands and say the most precise thing I had received in 3 years of handling other people's transmissions. I think it was the right direction, just the wrong address. A telegraph operator's whole work is address. Every message has one. You cannot send a word anywhere without knowing exactly where it is going, and you cannot receive a word without knowing exactly where it came from. Cale Holt had been sending his words to Ohio for 8 months, and somewhere in those 8 months the address had been wrong, and he had known it before the replies stopped, I think. He had just needed the silence to confirm it. He came in last Tuesday at 9:30. He had a message slip. He slid it across the counter, one word on it. "My name," he said. I wanted to see how it felt to send it in the right direction. I picked up my key. I sent it.